Hey guys, good morning. Hey, I wanted to, I was just searching around the internet, looking at a few things, trying to understand the timing of things, and I've looked at this timing of events before, and I've been 100% wrong every time. But somehow, somewhere, at some point, I think the Lord's going to allow us to come to the realization of exactly how His events are going to play out. And this is just this is sort of an educated guess at looking at something that has been very confusing to me over the years. And I'm going to make use of the Nick Vanderland's. He has this Elohim Essene Enoch solar calendar that he talks about, and that he's been very diligent to keep up. So I have a copy of it here. I'm going to use this calendar. It's the Enoch calendar, but more importantly, what Nick has done, he's done something different than I think that most people, I'd say anyone I've ever seen, pick apart Leviticus 23. And what he's done is, you see where it says, "Speak to the people of Israel." Starts talking here. Feast of the Lord. Speak to the people of Israel. Speak to the people of Israel. Speak to the people of Israel. Um, what he's what he's saying is that the Passover, which is the feast that's in the first of the month, is a separate feast, separate dates, not connected to the Feast of First Fruits. I can see how he's coming up with that, um, with that, um, with that theory. And the Feast of First Fruits is difficult in itself because you don't know where it begins and where it ends. It talks about on the day that you wave the sheaf, the sheaf of first fruits. I mean, when you come into the land, what day? When you come into the land that I give you and reap the harvest, when is that? I mean, how do you know what day that is? That's just when you happen to stroll into the land and you reap the harvest. Because it's supposed to be, according to Nick, disconnected from the Passover, which gives us a specified date. Now, Nick, what he did was he used some of the writings from the Essenes, and he came away with what he would say is the day that they recognized as when the Feast of First Fruits began. And I'm not going to really get into that here, but I wanted to show you something I found kind of interesting. So, one of my good friends is this guy Ron. He has a YouTube channel called Jesus Rules. I'd recommend going to it. He receives modern day prophetic Rima words. Um, Subscribe to him if you haven't heard of him. Go to his videos, listen to his videos. He's a really good guy, and I want to just play a little bit of his testimony that when he describes how he first started to hear that still small voice, and the very first thing that was told to him by the Lord, we're going to look at in Leviticus 23. Let's go ahead and play it right here.
Homeless. And this went on for about a year. So once I started reading the Bible, I came across a verse that says, if you sit still, you can hear my still small voice. And I said to myself, I want to hear from God. So I went to a place and I quieted myself down. And lo and behold, he started to speak to me. And he said, so it shall be as in the days of Noah. I shall come as a thief in the night. Prepare yourself and read Leviticus 23, 18 through 30. It's very important to me. At that point, I had been reading all of the Bible.
So what he was told to read was Leviticus 23, 18 through 30. And so when you get to verse 18, you're in the Feast of Weeks. And the Feast of Weeks is what we call Pentecost. And typically Pentecost is 7 weeks after what we would say Easter or Resurrection Sunday. I hate to say Easter, we all know why. And so verse 18, so this is the Feast of First Fruits. What Nick Vanderland is saying is separate from Passover, and I'll show you when he determines that date is. And then this is where it gets very confusing. This is one of the most underlooked or ignored verse in all the Bible with people who study this kind of stuff. So what it says is this. It says how you determine the Feast of Weeks, or how you determine the date of Pentecost, or the date of Pentecost. So, or Shavuot. He says, you shall count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. So that wave offering thing is the feast of first. So on the feast of first fruits, that's when you do the wave offering. So the feast of weeks is 7 full weeks after the Sabbath that you do this. And then there's verse 16, and this is the verse that is, I, I read it and I don't understand why people don't realize what it says. And it says, you shall count 50 days to the day after the seventh Sabbath. Now, this is the ESV version. The King James sounds very similar, but this verse here suggests or states that there's another 50-day count after the seventh Sabbath. Not the first Sabbath, the seventh Sabbath. So the first verse 15 says 7 full weeks after the Sabbath of the feast of first fruits. Then there's another 50 days. So I think what happens is people take verse 15 and they just lay verse 16 and 15 on top of one another, and they come up with this 50-day Omer count. But I don't think that's what it says. I think it says you count the 7 full weeks, then you count 50 more days. Okay, and then on that particular day, now let me just go to Nick's calendar. And so he's got the feast here, Omer count day 1. He's got first fruits on the 26th day of the first month. So this is outside of Passover. Passover and unleavened bread are up here. The 14th day is Passover. Then you got the 7 days of unleavened bread. And the day that Jesus rose was on the 18th day of that morning, is what Nick has. And so he pulls the feast of first fruits outside of that because of his theory about, to speak to the children of Israel. It's a separate feast. And then he starts, he has the feast of first fruits, like I said, on this 26th day of the first month. I don't know how he gets that from the Essenes. I'm fine with it. I'll go with it. And he counts 50 days, and that's a day. So the Sabbath was the 25th day. Then he counts 50 days, but the text says go 7 full weeks. 7 full weeks would be the 14th day of the third month. And then the text says count 50 more days. So I'm doing what the text says. Now Nick doesn't do this. I'm doing what the text says. It says just to count 50, 50 more days. That's what it says. You shall count 7 full weeks to the day after the Sabbath. That would be the day after the first fruits Sabbath, which Nick has on that one day. And then the next verse, you shall count 50 days to the day after the seventh Sabbath. See, 7 full weeks, then count 50 days to the seventh Sabbath. So I go to Nick's calendar. Here's that seventh Sabbath. So I start counting 50 more days. That's what verse 16 says to do. You go along, you're counting. This is the count right here. Right now, we would be July. We're like in the 33rd day right now, July 5th. Then you go out to 50, and look where it lands on. The 50th day lands on the third day of the fifth month, which is the festival, the new wine festival, which I find kind of interesting. It's July 22nd. So let's go back to the text and says what happens on this 50th day, this third day of the fifth month. And look what it says. All right. Okay. So yeah, you shall count 50. Okay. Then on that day you shall present a grain offering of new grain to the Lord. You shall bring it from your dwelling places, 2 loaves of bread to be waved, made in 2/10 of ephah, fine flour, baked with leaven. This is the first fruits of the Lord. You shall present on that day with the bread of 7 lambs, a year old without blemish, 1 bull of the herd, 2 rams. They shall be a burnt offering to the Lord with their grain offering and their drink offering, a food offering with a pleasant aroma to the Lord. And you shall offer 1 male goat, sin offering, 2 male lambs. I mean, it's a lot of stuff here going on, guys. And the priest, who are the priests? Remember Revelation 1, I will make you a kingdom of priests, the harvest worker maybe, and you shall present and wave them. It would be your basket or your fruit of harvest. You shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before the Lord with the 2 lambs. They shall be holy to the Lord and for the priest. And you shall make a proclamation on that same day. You shall hold a holy convocation. Okay, that same day that the priests, that would be the Christian harvest workers, are going to wave their first fruits to the Lord on that same day, that 50th day. You shall hold a holy convocation. So, look, I'm just stepping out of here and I'm trying to understand what the word says. And that 50th day could be the day that the harvest workers ascend with their basket of first fruits and present them to the Lord. Now, I don't know what that means. We have to have the harvest first. We got to go back 7 days or whatever day that is and say when the first harvest begins. You guys have seen me show those diagrams before. Let's see here. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here's the idol worship day when the tablets were broken. Look, I don't know what's going to happen when, but I do know it says this holy convocation. We see that mentioned in Joel. I spell that right. Does Joel have this holy? No, it doesn't. Joel speaks of this. Guys, I'm losing myself here. Not here. It's it's down here in verse 4. Consecrate a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders. This is Joel 1, chapter 14. And you go to Joel 2, blow the trumpet in Zion. Down here it talks about that there's going to be a holy convocation. You're going to gather up the children. Right here. Blow the trumpet in Zion, consecrate a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the people, consecrate the congregation. See, the people are already in Zion at this point, the heavenly Mount Zion. And then it says the bride and the bridegroom are going to leave their chamber and go back to the earth to begin the second harvest. That's what I see here. So I'm just taking the personal testimony of Ron. Why was Ron told specifically by the Lord to go to Leviticus 23 and read those verses 18 through 30? I would say because these verses have not been fulfilled yet. And that when the Lord starts back up when he starts to come back and actually work the earth and the church age is over, this is where he's going to pick up where he left off. Because he himself, remember, he was the Passover lamb. He was the first fruits. And now it's time for the next group of first fruits, the next in line group of first fruits, to begin their harvest working, to be as a priest to the Lord, to gather in the harvest. So I just found it strange that our friend Ron was told to begin his study here at verse 18. I think that means something. So guys, I'll have a link to my version, the Nick's calendar. I've just added a column and added this 50 days. Nick, he might come on and comment about it. I don't know. He might completely disagree with this 15, verse 15 and verse 16. But a lot of my friends, Petra, she's known this for a while, that these are two sets of, it's a 7-week time frame and a 50 time frame. And I really see these two verses stretching out to 99 days is what it boils down to. With that, guys, have a great day and God bless you.